everybody. It's Michelle Jackson. I'm here with the Pen Posse Roundtable. This is our July Roundtable. Hadn't seen you guys, I think, since around April when I was preparing for the Black Writers Workspace. The Black Ink Book Festival here in New Orleans. And it was such an amazing event in New Orleans in May. And I hope that you guys will join us. This is our in-person book fair. We've had several virtual ones, but this has been our live one. And so I took a break after May because it was a lot of work getting that book fair together. We had 90 authors from all over the country to come into New Orleans. And so now we're back with our July Pen Posse Roundtable. And today we're going to be talking about what I wish I knew before publishing my book. So we have a distinguished group of authors with us, and they're going to be sharing, giving little tips and ideas of things that they learned, what they had to unlearn, how they were able to progress in this whole book publishing world. They're going to be candid. They're going to share some of the things, the hard things, the great things, the passions. They're going to share it all with you so that you can move forward with publishing your book. I know a lot of you out there, you have a bunch of questions, especially if you've never published, self-published, or traditionally published a book. How should I do it? Should I self-publish? Should I traditionally publish? Who should I use? What editor do I need? What kind of editor is out there? Who should do my book cover? What should be on the book cover? How do I write my synopsis for my book? How do I market my book? All these questions are things that each and every one of us had to decide on. And for me, I've written 3 books, all self-published, and I have worked and interviewed hundreds of you over the years. I'm going to be sharing what I've learned. And I'm also going to be sharing what I understand about marketing and public relations, because I own a PR firm here in New Orleans, and I work with a lot of people around building their brand. So we're going to talk about that as well. But for now, let's bring everybody on the screen. Hello.
Maria.
Hello.
Maria.
Hello.
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 Hello, everybody. Hello. This is going to be, you see this, look at this, big, beautiful black faces this morning, early. I know some of you are like, oh, it's too early for me to be up, but get your coffee. We've got 2 hours. We're going to be talking. For those of you out there who are watching, you can drop your questions on Facebook or YouTube, and we're going to get them up on the screen and get you some answers. So this is very interactive. And so we do ask that you do that. This will also be evergreen. So you'll be able to view this in a week or 2 weeks, later today, whenever, because it is on YouTube. And so that's why we do it this way. So for the record, I do not know everyone on the screen. This is why we do it this way. I am new to them. They are new to me. So they're not my buddies and friends. They're going to tell you what I want them to say. They're going to tell you what they know about this whole publishing world. But before we get started with the questions, and we're going to be breaking up our questions into 4 different areas, and we'll talk about that shortly. I want everyone to give a very short introduction of yourself. Let people know who you are and what you've written. And then we'll come back towards the end and you can tell a little bit more about your book. So for myself, I am Michelle Jackson. I'm a 3 times published author. I self-published my works. I published my first book in 2010, The Heart of a Man, which was an award-winning book, self-published book. First time out the gate, didn't know what I was doing, used vanity publishing, and we'll talk a little bit about that. And my second book was in 2020, right before I started the Black Writers Workspace. And in 2021, I wrote my 3rd book, which was a graphic novel that teaches young people how to start businesses. And my 2nd book, From Darkness to Night, is a women's fiction book that has also been recognized by some local organizations. So I'm really proud of that. So let's start with you, LaMonda. Tell us about yourself. Tell us about your work.
Hello, my name is LaMonda Sykes Thompson. I'm from Durham, North Carolina. I am the founding author of With the Capital M Publishing Group. I'm a 3 times published author as well. The first book I wrote and self-published without knowing anything was my poetry book, More Than Words, My Life, My Thoughts, My Journey. My second book is Her Voice, which is a children's book. And my 3rd book is His Big Mistake, which is also a children's book. I'm so excited to be here. And I can't wait to meet everyone and have this discussion. So thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much for being with us. Andrew?
Hey, good morning, everybody. My name is Andrew Snorton. I'm based in the Atlanta, Georgia area. Since February 2017, I've 4 books and have an audiobook series. So real briefly, Deeper Than Your Deepest Thoughts on Love and Snorton is a poetic retelling looking at the energy of love through male lenses. 9 Stories of Faith, Volume 1 are interview-based stories of motivation, encouragement, empowerment, because everyone is dealing with something. Some people deal with something each and every day and how they have the fortitude to get through it. Nothing Minor focuses on my very first year covering minor league baseball in the Southeast, so it's a focus on a number of African-American players, and a nice segment for the city of Birmingham with the Negro Southern Leagues Museum. Quotes and Notes is your think piece, as we know what you put in your head is going to show up in some way, shape, or form. And then the audiobook series, the author's mixtape, poetry, spoken word, all freestyle. So I'm excited to share not only my work, the lessons I've learned, but learning from everybody else on this panel who's doing tremendous work. So I'm ramped up, excited, got my cup of coffee. I'm good to go.
Sounds great. Thank you, Andrew. He's been with us several times. He brings always a wealth of knowledge. So thank you so much for being with us. Torrie, introduce yourself.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Torrie Q. Jones. I hope y'all can hear me. Okay. I am a 2-time self-published author. I write urban fantasy novels. This was more of a passion thing. I got tired of the negative stories that they feed inner city kids. So I figure write something that can kind of let them connect to the story, but still show them that it's big. Their world is bigger than what they see every day. So that's my idea. Hopefully my series will get more traction. It is going to be a 6-book series. Right now, I'm currently writing book 3. It's called Reborn the Book Series. And the first 2 books, Sun and Luck, is out now.
Excellent. Nice to meet you. This is our first time connecting. So this is excellent. Frederick? Can I call you Fred? Is that okay? Or is it Frederick?
It's fine. Yeah.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. My name is Frederick Smith. I use he, him pronouns. I'm currently based in San Francisco, California, but I'm originally from Detroit, Michigan. I am a traditionally published author of 6 novels focusing on Black LGBTQ characters, primarily set in Los Angeles. And my latest is called One and Done, which I call a Black, queer, higher ed Bay Area romance novel. It came out in June 2024. All of my novels, if you want to think about Elin Harris from like the 1990s and 2000s, think about that type of genre, but for the 2020s. Great to be here this morning.
Excellent, excellent. And Frederick's going to speak to us from the traditional publishing perspective, because most of us, I think, are independently published. I think I have someone else else on the screen who has published traditionally. So definitely you have someone here you can ask those questions too. We always get questions about how do I get a publishing deal? So that question comes up a lot. Great to have you here. Nathelie?
Good morning, everyone. I'm Nathelie Zetrenne-Norman. I am a Haitian American author, 6-time self-published, and the owner of Z House Publishing. I specialize in children's books, and I also write what I like to call Black self-help literature. I am currently working on Summer Smarties, which is an educational workbook series for children. Super excited to help get them on their way with school and help bridge some educational gaps. So that's what I'll be working on. I'm super excited to be here.
Excellent, excellent. Melissa?
Hello, everyone. Of course, I'm Melissa. I'm a Haitian author, and I am officially a 20-time self-published author. The first 15 of my books, I know, I love that. The first 15 of my books are a Learn Creole Haitien Pictionary series. Like I said, I'm a Haitian author, and so immigrating from Haiti to America, and I have a Haitian daughter, I realized that, my language is not popularized. And so my mom always said, if someone else didn't do it, then you got to do it. So I did it 15 times. And then after that, I'm a midwife as well. And so I have other books that detail on pregnancies, on breastfeeding, on things of that nature. And so that's who I am. And I'm so excited to be here.
Excellent, excellent. Can everyone hear me? Okay, great. Okay, Naseera, I'm gonna butcher this, so please forgive me for it.
This is Naseera.
Naseera, okay.
Hi, I am Naseera. I was born in Buffalo, New York, Due to my father's job, we had to move to Los Angeles. My father is the wrestler Bearcat Wright. When they got a contract with WWE at the time, they had a contract with the Shrine Auditorium, so we had to move. So I was raised in Los Angeles. I left LA in 2003 and moved to Vegas. And then from Vegas, I'm here in Texas. My first book came out in 1995. And there is a big story about that. It didn't take off like I wanted it to, but it was the first book that was ever written about a bloodborne daughter of Dracula from Africa. I am a horror romance genre suspense romance author. I have been traditionally published now for 7 novels that are available. I love the genre. All of my characters are African-American based. I do have one LGBTQ horror romance novel that I'm very proud of. My current book is called The Liar, and I am very happy to be here.
Excellent. Excellent. So much. First of all, thank you all. We got through introductions in 10 minutes, so that's always excellent. Let's get down to these questions. And for those of you out there, you can drop your questions on Facebook or on YouTube. So find us on author Michelle D. Jackson on Facebook. You will find this link where you can watch us live, or you can also watch us on YouTube. So if you're out there, drop me a hello so we'll know that you're here. But we're going to break down this conversation into 4 different areas. One is what I learned during the writing process. So everybody get your stories together, the 2 things that you learned during that process and how to keep yourself going. What did you learn during the publishing process, which is a totally different thing. We're going to talk a little bit about publishing, of course. What did we learn in the book marketing process? Okay. And then we're going to talk about some publishing challenges. And why this is so important is because no one is writing books just to write them, right? We want to put our words out there. We want to, control the narrative. We want to share with the world our experiences, which is excellent. But we also want to sell books. We want to sell books. And so we want to make sure that the people who are starting from scratch, starting at ground zero specifically, and those who are maybe even on book 2, book 3, and didn't like how the publishing process worked for book 1, we want to educate them on the things that we all had to learn. Now, what's great about this is we all have different experiences. I talk to writers all the time. Some people meet someone by chance and get a publishing deal. I met someone who had a traditional deal and found someone who just happened to want to make her book a movie. Wasn't even looking for that. And it happened. I have those who self-publish because they have no interest in getting a traditional deal. And then I have those who will get a traditional deal and dislike it so much they go back to self-publishing because of the experience. So there are so many different things that happen on this process. So we're not going to pretend that my story is going to be Andrew's and Andrew's going to be mine and Frederick's going to be mine. No, we're all different. We're all coming from this from different angles. And so if you're out there and you're really passionate about this, don't worry if your experience is different than your friend's experience. Let's jump into how we can make sure that you avoid the potholes and have a successful publishing journey, which is what's important. So let's start off by looking at some of the facts. Okay. Over 90% of self-published books sell under 100 copies during their lifetime. Anybody know that for those self-published people out there? We're not selling a lot of books unless you have a very progressive marketing strategy. The average self-published author will earn under $1,000 for book sales during the first year or so. The average self-published book title will sell around 250 copies. For a traditional publisher, only 1 or 2% of people who submit for a traditional publishing deal will get that deal. You're talking about NBA, NFL, how many people will actually go to the NBA, NFL type of numbers. So this is not an easy feat. And I'm not trying to start negative, but I am trying to get everybody to think about the fact that when you don't do this the way it needs to be done, you're just going to create more hurdles, more heartache for yourself. So this is why this conversation is so important. So let's get started with, what did we learn before we put pen to paper and fingertip to keys, that was critical in helping us to begin and finish the work. So we're going to start before we even start writing. What did you learn or what did you have to unlearn, LaMonda, in order to move the needle at that point?
So I think for me, I didn't really want to self-publish. I didn't think I was going to publish a book at all. It just kind of happened. And what we discussed during our interview before Black Ink Book Festival, I really got into this because my mama told me to. So this was just something that I happened to stumble on. But one thing that I did learn was that I just have to get it out. Whatever that looks like, if it's just dumping it all on paper and getting it to whoever the person that will read it, I just needed to get it out. It didn't have to look perfect. It didn't have to be, all of the things like aesthetically pleasing, all that. I just needed to get it out. But what I did have to unlearn was like, I guess critiquing myself or thinking like it had to be perfect, like unlearning the perfectionism, because that is a big hurdle, not only for creators, but writers as well. Like you want everything to be so nice. You want everything to be so cute and in this like nice little package, but really the purpose of writing your book is to get it out to help somebody else. It's not just for you.
I love that. Yeah, I love that. I love that because we have a tendency to let perfection to be the enemy of the good. I love that quote. And that is so true. Frederick, talk to us about what did you have to overcome, unlearn? What obstacles were out there that could have stopped you from just moving towards writing that first book?
Great question. So thanks to my parents, I have always been like respected teachers, listen to teachers. And one of the things they always taught me was to really take the feedback and the lessons from teachers seriously, just in terms of whatever they gave in terms of positive feedback, critiques, etc. And so I took those lessons into some of my creative writing classes, whether it was in high school, college, or post-college, in terms of really paying attention to the ways in which creative writing teachers were trying to help me in my craft, help me in my storytelling, talking about their lessons learned. And there's this really great quote by Paulo Freire who says, "We're all unfinished, we're all learners, we're all in the process of growing." And so I never see myself as like a finished product in terms of being just because I'm published doesn't mean I can't learn. And so for me, it's always been about listening to other authors, hearing their lessons, paying attention to what teachers say. But then I also, I don't know, maybe it's because I'm a Virgo, I don't know. I observe people and I feel like I learn a lot by observation. And so when I'm on social media, when I'm watching author panels, I really pay attention to what they say in terms of what they've learned, what they've needed to unlearn. I also watch how they interact with other people. Do they come across with a positive vibe? Do they come across with a negative vibe? Because I've always just thought that coming across, with a positive vibe, really taking in what people share is really important. And so I would say that's my first lesson, is just learning to listen to my writing teachers and really taking seriously what they share, but then also learning to sift through the critiques that may or may not be in my best interest, but not doing it publicly, but just kind of taking it back and reflecting on those lessons.
I love that. I love that. Torrie, what did you have to unlearn to get to the point where you could even write? Because guys, this is where it's really the toughest, in my opinion, is getting things started and getting the confidence to do it. Because I grew up reading Maya Angelou and J. California Cooper and Alice Walker, and I was like, I can't write like that. And even though I wanted to write a book, I was so worried that it wasn't going to translate well, that it wasn't going to be accepted, it wasn't going to be liked, it wasn't going to be good enough. And so that hindered me from even getting started. So Torrie, talk to us. What did you have to unlearn to get to the place where you could even put pen to paper?
Well, for me in my journey, I really didn't consider myself a writer. Like I said in my introduction, this was more of a passion thing. So for me, I had to just unlearn the business writing stuff. I'm a project manager by trade. So I had to get out of the professional writing, you can say, and just write my thoughts down from how I wanted my story to sound, right? It took me actually 3 years to start my story. I think I wrote my outline for almost 3 years, just trying to get it together. And I can honestly say when I finally sat down in 2020 to write it, it only took me 8 months to write my book. And it's almost a 400-page novel. So, like you said, you just have to start. And that was the biggest thing for me. And once I started, it just flowed like I'm supposed to really tell this story.
Yes, absolutely. Talk to us, Nathelie, about that thing you wish you would have known at that point. What do you wish you would have known then that would have helped you to get beyond, someone said in the comments, imposter syndrome and all the things that we struggle with in order to move towards the destiny that really is out there for us?
Absolutely. That's a great question. I think what I wish I would have known was that I did not have to continue to self-censor. I did a lot of writing in the academic space, and that looks very different from books that I write, things that I want people to finger snap to, things that people read and I want them to be like, oh, she's preaching, or oh, she's really making me think and dig deep. That kind of writing is different. And so I struggled a lot with self-censorship and thinking that my books were not going to be of quality because it was very different from what I was used to. And I hadn't seen too many books like that before. So I wish I would have known earlier that. But I also wish I would have known or had the mindset that like everything's not for everybody. So you're gonna write something, and there's always gonna be someone who it's not for, and that's okay. You're writing it for the people you want it to resonate with. So drown out that noise and not worry about the naysayers or the people who may say like, "Oh, I didn't like it." Write it because you believe in it, and because the person who you believe is gonna pick it up is going to be like, "Oh my God, this was great."
Excellent. Love that. Everything is not for everybody. If you're not speaking, let's get our mutes. I'm sorry. Let's mute our mics because I can hear a little feedback. But absolutely, everything is not for everybody. These are the things that we have to unlearn, because you go into this process and you really expect for it to be. Um, you want to be perfect at it, and it's just no way for that to happen. And so, talk to us about what you had to unlearn in this process. I mean, you've got multiple traditionally published books. I remember looking at your bio, and you were talking about some of the challenges that you had to face in order to get to those, that traditional publishing deal. But what did you have to unlearn just to get pen to paper? Yes, sir.
Okay, sorry. I had to unlearn not to, and it was mentioned before, not to restrict myself. You have to be convicted and convinced. You have to have thick skin in this industry. And I've said this to people time and time again. You have to believe in what you're doing. I had to learn how not to hesitate or not to think that what I'm doing is not going to be well received. I had to put action to what I wanted to do and be confident enough to know that this is what I'm going to do. This is going to work. I do understand that I'm not going to please everybody, but as long as I'm putting it out there, I'm going to do it. And I had to learn how not to be my own worst critic.
I love that. I love that. So I've got Melissa and Andrew left to answer this question, and I'm going to take it in a little bit of a different direction. Were there things that you had to overcome that had more to do with who you were as a person? You know, whether it's race, sex, sexuality, religion, to get pen to paper? And if so, how did you overcome? I mean, as a woman writer, as an African American woman, as an African American man, were there challenges based on who you were? Because I know for me, I kept saying nobody is going to care about my story. Who cares about the story of young woman who grew up in Alabama and military wife, blah blah blah. But that's the beauty of writing. It's these stories. These stories, we're controlling the narrative. So, Melissa, talk to us about what you had to unlearn to get pen to paper, and whether or not there were anything about you as an individual that you had to overcome in order to get to that place.
Yeah, so for me, what I had to unlearn was actually thinking that the only way I could be an author or have the title of an author is if I was published traditionally. For the longest, I didn't call myself an author because I'm like, oh, it's not really like serious. Like this self-publishing is like baby things. I don't know. And for so long, when I would talk to other published authors, they kind of downplayed self-publishing as well. It's like, oh, that's what you're doing? Oh, okay. And it's like, oh, sorry. And so for me, that was like the biggest thing, is unlearning that even if I didn't publish it, just the fact that I wrote it down, I'm an author, I'm a writer. I have these titles. I can be that. It doesn't have to look a certain way or be on a certain platform or format. And with that, once I plugged in and was like, oh, I could be, I've already been an author. I mean, I wrote my first book in the 5th grade. So I've been an author for years at this point, technically. Once I keyed into that, I realized for me, at least just as a woman and just as a Haitian woman, especially, that people really want books from someone like me. That was another big thing that I learned, because I used to think oh, no one wants a book from me, or, oh, there's other authors that do that already. But they weren't me. And so I've actually had people who just wanted to buy a book from Melissa Philippe. And so I'm like, oh, okay, that's wonderful. Thank you. And so that for me is something that I had to unlearn. And just one of the challenges as an author is really just understanding that people love me as an author, literally just me. Doesn't matter what kind of books I write, what I'm saying, they will support me in whatever aspects. And so just understanding that who I am is cherished, and that's all that matters, really. Just continue writing and be proud of that.
Excellent. I love what you said about the traditional publishing thing. I went through that as well. I published my first book in 2010, and I just thought I was going to be a fraud if I self-published the book. I just didn't know enough about enough, I really didn't. And so that's excellent that you brought that up. Excellent. Andrew, talk to us. What did you have to unlearn to get pen to paper?
Wow. All right. Gee, there's so much. To be honest with you, I'll try to keep it as concise as possible. I think the first thing is probably the biggest competition is actually you. And I say that in piggybacking what other people have said. Sometimes you get in your own way because of the pathway that you're choosing, whether it's traditional or self-publishing, the topics that you choose. You're thinking, who's really going to read this? Who's really going to do all that? And you got to get out of your own way. You're really your biggest competition. You're your biggest advocate, but you can also be your biggest adversary. So you have to make sure each and every day, just in your writing and putting things together, you can't get in your own way. You have to stay out of your own way. And I think the second thing, and I think all of us in here are doing it, it's something that we know, but every once in a while in the process, you're like, is this really going the way it's supposed to go? But it's something I said before, you have to focus on being authentic and accessible, whatever that looks like. The topics that you're choosing, are you helping amplify others' voices who have these concerns, and you're just helping put it together so it's not all over the place? Is it you talking about your life experiences, things along those lines, and remembering to be accessible? So whether it's 4 syllables or 4-letter words that you use, traditional, non-traditional, the academic or vernacular, to make sure that people can access and understand what you're doing, the direction you're going in, all that type of thing. So, as was said earlier, it doesn't have to be the perfect piece, but make it a piece that can be somebody else's piece, including yours.
Love it. Love it. We got a couple of questions coming in, more than a notion over here. We're going to take a couple of them. Thank you, everybody, for that round. Such good information. During this phase we talking about, this is before you even put pen to paper. You have to be authentic in what you're doing. You need to get beyond the idea that you, as Andrew said, your biggest competition is you. You are your biggest competition. Get beyond these ideas that you have to be traditionally published in order to be considered an author. You are an author once you put that pen to paper. I remember a professor in college said that you are the author of your own story. And that is so true. We are all authors in our nature anyway. What you write doesn't have to be for everyone. I'm just kind of going over what everyone came up with, that you don't have to censor yourself. Unlearn that you have to self-censor yourself. Sometimes you have to unlearn these business and academic writing skills that we have in order to get to a place where you can be a creative writer. And I had to do the same thing. Have a PR company, and this is writing creatively is totally different from PR writing. Most of anything, don't worry about being perfect at this phase. Just write and get started. Get started. And something that Frederick said I think is so important is listen, learn, pay attention to the people around you, your educators, your writers, your writing friends. Listen and learn so that you can progress. So this is a great round, but let's get to some of these questions. Man, I'm getting a lot of comments. Let's see what we can come up with, and we'll just pop a couple of them up. We're not going to answer them all, and we'll have like one person maybe respond to it. I'm so excited. This is Marcus. I'm so excited about this discussion. My name is Marcus from the Maryland area. I'm working on my first book. I'm working on basic skills. Any leads on a writing coach or an editor? Anybody want to talk a little bit about someone that you would recommend, or if you want to follow up with Marcus later, because these questions will be in the Facebook. Open up your mic. Give us a couple of ideas. And even if we don't have specific information on coaches or editors, give them a little advice on how to find a good, what to look for in a good coach or editor. Go for it.
I know for me, the editing process was one of the most stressful, because with me not having, any connections in the book industry at all, it's like, where do I go? Where do I start? Who do I talk to? How much does this cost? And Mark, you could try to look up on Instagram, Meet the World. I can send you a message separately, but I have someone that can probably help you. She is actually a writing coach, and she does publish books as well. It's a Black-owned publishing company, so I could share that with you later. But editing, oh my gosh, I started with someone randomly. You know how we are. We don't know each other, so we're all connecting, right? So I found an editor on Facebook through one of the author circles I was in. And for me, writing fantasy and fiction novels is very different than other genres. So the way that we speak, the way that the writing styles, it can be different, I didn't know that. A lot of times I'm thinking that I have to follow the traditional way because I read a lot. So reading some fantasy books, I'm thinking I had to follow their same thing. So the first editor that I dealt with, she told me that she, was an editor. She's been editing for years. She showed me all these credentials, all these other books that she, edited. And something that I didn't pay attention to that I should have was none of those books was fantasy books. All of them were self-help, Christian-like, to where when we got into the editing stage of my book, we were almost going back and forth. Like I felt like she was trying to change my story and trying to put her perspective on my story. And I remember a few times going back and forth with her saying, this is a fantasy book. I don't understand what you're asking. Like, I'm not understanding what more or what more clarification you're asking. It's part of the story that I'm telling. And at the end of it, at the end where, she finished with book one, she apologized because she realized this was not a genre that she was familiar with.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
$5,000 later, this is $5,000 later, about 3 months, going back and forth. So it's like, when I tell you that was one of the biggest lessons learned for a self-published author, you have to know who's editing your book. You have to know that they understand the kind of story that you're writing. She didn't, and I end up still having to pay another $800 for line editing.
Yeah, I want to let some other people talk about this too. Thank you so much, Torrie. That is key. This editing thing is no joke. I do not believe you write a book and you get a book published without it being professionally edited. I want to put that down. The Black Writers Workspace is something we believe in professional editing, because that is one of the reasons why people don't trust a lot of our self-published books, is because they think that they are so poorly written and they're not edited. I'm just being real with you. So if we want to change that, we have to care about the product that we're putting out into the world. But when you're looking for an editor, it can be the biggest hustle. Mm-hmm. I know my first editor just put a bunch of comma splices in. And I remember getting my book back and just went, what in the world? It was just comma after comma after comma. So I end up I paid her, and then I had to find another editor. So once again, you're out of money, because people say they're editors, and some people want to rewrite your work, and some people can't write, but they're just adding different things. So you need to understand the difference between a line editor, a developmental editor, and a copy editor. And those three things, once you know the difference and you find someone, as Torrie said, that understands your genre and your tone, that's important too. Let's talk. Anybody else? Open up your mic. Let's talk about this idea of editors. I mean, talk to me about some of your experiences.
So for me, I like to tell my clients, I have a lot of novice authors or self-published authors that I work with. I tell them to check their circle. Just because there are a lot of people who they may not be professional editors, but they are like readers, avid readers, and they may be in that genre and they can give you advice. Like Frederick said, just listen to what they have to say about your book. But as it's been mentioned, you need to interview the person that you're going to possibly work with. Give them a sample of your writing, ask them to review it, and just give me feedback on this sample. If it doesn't fit what you want or you desire, go to the next person. Because you don't want to spend thousands and thousands upon thousands of dollars and it's not right. So always, and that's the biggest advice that I have for my clients and anyone, is just interview the person that you're thinking about hiring, and then also look into your circle, because someone may know someone else who could, possibly lead to your editor. So, yeah.
Love that. Anybody else want to talk about this?
One thing I'll share around editing is, so I hear a lot about it's an investment of money. And so I like to often offer free to low cost editing processes as well. Getting in writer circles, whether it's through a local bookstore, where you can build a trusted circle of people who can become both beta readers, but also, who can help you with both grammar and story structure, can be helpful as well. A lot of local bookstores will have kind of writer circles that meet monthly, every other month, where you can create that sense of community with other people who you will offer critiques to, and they will offer critiques to you as well. Also, community colleges tend to be free or low cost. And that's a great way to connect with creative writing teachers. And again, building a circle of people who both you're offering of your services as an editor and as a critique partner, but also receiving that feedback as well, I think is really important in terms of finding people who will read and help you along the way, developmentally, grammarly, with grammar, etc. And I think third, the final thing that I heard someone say is, as in terms of interviewing editors, is really asking what their focus is. Is it just on grammar? Is it on story structure? Is it going to be someone who's going to help, find all those dangling pieces that might be missing at the end? Or, you have one character's name one way in the beginning and they're going to spot, oh, they started out as Jackie, but now they're, Janessa at the end or something like that. And so I think it's important to really do that interview process with people who you want to pay for this type of service. But I would say the free to low cost in terms of building a trusted writing circle through a local bookstore, ask if they have any writers groups building, or community colleges, I think are a great place to have a free to low cost space to build a writing community who can then help with that writing and developmental pieces with your works.
Sounds good. This is great. Marcus has one more question. I want to open it up to someone, just one person to answer this question. How do you set measurable goals along the way to work towards accomplishing the book? This is such a great question because, some of us write when we are passionate about writing. Like I write only when I feel the need to write, but there are those who are very structured. I was reading that Walter Mosley will write, I think 1 hour a day, or everyone has their own philosophy for how they write and accomplish their work. Anyone on here doing something unique? Andrew?
Yeah, I wanted to dive in on that question, setting measurable goals. A lot of it, to me, is going to depend on what's the topic that hooks and holds you, that's going to drive you. And then another thing is, quote, we all talk about being consistent, but consistency looks different based on, where you are, seriously, where you are mentally and the topic and things along those lines. And I can tell you for each book that I did, some took me a shorter amount of time. Another one took me like almost a year and a half to complete. So I think what you have to do, and it sounds, like cliche-ish, start small. Maybe the first small goal is, let me just get used to putting something down in a journal or what have you. So you're building up the habit of writing. And like other people have said, it doesn't matter how refined it is, just start building up the habit. And then once you're building up the habit and it's that topic that keeps you up at night, that's going to kind of drive and dictate how many are you going to write in the morning? Are you going to do it at night? Are you going to do it all day? Are you going to do like a couple of days on, a couple of days off? A lot of it kind of to me organically comes. Like, yeah, we have an idea of, okay, we're going to commit X amount of days per week or X amount of hours. It doesn't always look like that. But once you figure out, based on the topic, based on where your head is, now you're able to set your smaller goals to align with your larger goals and getting it done.
Excellent. I got a couple of comments coming in, all good stuff. We'll get to some of them, but we're going to move to the next part of, the things we wish we would have known before we publish our books, what we had to learn, what we had to unlearn in order to move things ahead. And this next part is about the publishing process. So now we've written the book, right? We've sat down, we've wrote the book. We've got a schedule, we've got an outline, however we choose to do it. Some of us use outline, some of us don't. I personally will outline. I kind of outline when I'm probably at chapter 3 or 4. It's funny. I want to just write first. I just get in and I just start writing, and then I'll build an outline and try to stick with it. Doesn't always work, but it does help me to make sure I'm not missing anything, because you don't want these gaps in your writing. Because one thing we have to realize is that the readers are smart, okay? The reader is smart. So whether you're writing fantasy or fiction, nonfiction, Christian fiction, whatever, if it doesn't make sense to the reader, they're going to call you on it. And I want you to be real clear about that. And that's why a good editor is important as well, because a good editor is going to look at it and say, oh, wait a minute. You said that you were taking this exit off of, a highway in Atlanta. Well, that exit, we get it that this is fiction, but if that exit existed, it would not take you in that door. These are things that you want to pay attention to, because you may think, well, this is fiction. Who cares? People care because it has to make sense to a certain degree. And I'm going to stop there and talk a little bit about this new Tyler Perry movie. I know this has nothing to do with anything, but if you guys saw The Voice in the Black, I don't know, is it Black in the, did you guys see it? Okay. There are so many complaints about the story having so many gaps in it. Okay. And I want everybody to take a look at this because this is a great experience, a great conversation to have around writing. Okay. We all want to be entertained. Our readers want to be entertained, but we also want to make sure that a story has all the different elements that it should have. So what that says is that during this process, we're not just writing to write. We're writing because we want to entertain and we want to inspire, right? So for those of you out there who are writing, if you woke up this morning and said, oh, I just decided I'm going to write this book, but I'm not going to get it edited. I'm not going to care about if it's a story that's going to make sense. I'm just going to write it and publish it. I want you to take a step back and say, this is your legacy. This is what people will know, will read about you in 50 years, and that it definitely does have to make sense. Okay. So homework, everybody watch Divorce in the Black, and let's get back to what is some of the gaps in these stories so that we don't do these types of things as we write. So let's talk about, we have now written the book. The book is done, but now we need book cover. We need editors. We talked a little bit about that. We need coaches to figure out how to get this book done. We have to decide whether we're going to traditionally publish it or, go after a traditional publisher, or we're going to self-publish. Let's talk about some of the things that we had to learn in this process once the book is done. What did you learn about book cover design? Or what you had to unlearn? Somebody open your mic and let's talk about it.
I had to learn that the cover of the book did not have to be precisely grafted to the characteristics of my characters. Mm-hmm. That's what I had to learn. Your character may be 5 foot tall, dark brown, curly hair, dark eyed, and then you're looking at a cover that fits that description. So I had to learn that the cover of the book has to speak to the content and not so much as the character and what they look like.
Interesting.
And that was hard. And the reason why I had to learn that, what got it for me is that everybody knows Fabio. Fabio has been on countless of romance novels from Harlequin to whomever. And then you read the book and the character in the book does not look like Fabio. So you're like, well, how did that work? Because you're looking in the book and you're looking at the characters and you're looking for someone who looks like him. And there's nothing like him within the scripture pages of the book. So I had to learn that a cover has to be a representation of the content and not so much as what my characters look like. So when I started self-publishing, being that I am an horror romance writer, I needed to make sure that my cover represented what the content of the story was about and not so much as what my characters look like. And that was difficult to learn. That was difficult because when I started searching covers and getting into the cover art, I couldn't find what my character looked like to put on the front of my cover of my book when I started to self-publish. But that was a lesson I had to learn.
Someone talked to me about the importance of these book covers too. I love that. I love that you said that. I never thought about it that way, but we do know Fabio. I didn't read the books, but to know that the character in the book wasn't like him, that is very interesting. But what's the point of that? Someone tell me why did they put Fabio on the cover of his book? This is for our writers out there who are trying to figure out what to put on that book cover. Anybody?
Marketing and sales.
Marketing and sales. That's it. If I can get you to be attracted to my book cover and you buy the book solely off the book cover, how many of us have ever purchased a book because of the book cover?
Oh, yeah.
Book covers are important. I had both of my book covers redone after over a year because I'm looking at the book cover and I'm like, this is not good. This is no good. So, and and for those of you who buy a lot of books, you know, a lot of books that are 40, 50, 60 years old, they're still changing the cover. I saw a new book cover on a James Baldwin book the other day. So that tells you the importance of a book cover. And I love what you said. Thank you for sharing that with us, because people out there need to understand that your book cover matters. Your book cover matters. It is the first peep into what this book is going to be about. And so if you decide, I'm going to let my 13-year-old draw something so I can make him feel good about his artwork, but it doesn't connect to the content of the book, then it becomes a challenge. So someone talk to me about something you had to unlearn or something you had to do to repair, fix, change your book cover to get it to a point where it is at its prime marketability. Nathelie, you got anything
I
with your
do.
book covers? Yeah, talk to us.
So, of course, when I was writing one of my books, Dear Beautiful, I was struggling with coming up with the cost to get it professionally done. And the hardest thing for me at that time was justifying paying for the cover to be done. Because I was like, dang, I really don't have it. And one of the things that I realized is you have to invest in what it is you're trying to do. It's not always going to be cheap. You may be able to find more affordable ways, but the vision that I had for my book was something that I had to really push myself to say, okay, this is going to be worth it. And it ended up being worth it. I ended up going to your book festival in New Orleans. And one of the number one compliments that I kept getting was, oh my God, you didn't even say anything about the book yet. And I saw the cover and it made me want to pick the book up. And then when I told them what the book was about, they were like, oh yeah, I need to buy it. So you have to remember that whatever it is that you want, it's not going to come cheap all the time. You have to be able to invest in yourself. So I always tell my clients, you gotta spend some money to make money.
Love it. Anybody else want to talk about their book cover? Something that happened, something they heard, made them change their minds about the direction of their book cover? Talk
I
to
don't
us.
want to. I don't want to say made me change my mind, but I will say my book one cover and the symbol kind of ruffle people's feathers sometime, and I find myself having to explain certain things. So my graphic designer, it's like you said, sometimes you can find affordable, sometimes you can't. So one thing is about networking, and I have a friend that owns her own graphic design company, so that's who I use for a lot of my my book covers, my website, things like that. So that's how I was able to accomplish that. But like Nathelie said before, everything is not for everybody. So my book cover specifically with the star, I don't have a book on me with the 6-point. It's a 6-point star because, again, like I said earlier, it's going to be a 6-book series, and each point is going to represent a book which is based on a character. So a lot of times I've seen people question, well, is that the Star of David? Oh, what does that mean? Is that symbol demonic? Different things like that. And I, again, having to explain, no, it's not what you think. And then, go into explain what my story is about. So I find that I decided I'm not changing my symbol. Like I said, everything is not for everybody. But I do feel as if maybe if I would have thought more about the backlash I would have gotten for picking that type of symbol, maybe I would have not created it. But I think the symbol goes with the story and the universe of the book so well that I'm not going to change it now. But it is important to have, a book cover that means something and shows what your content is. Like Miss Naseera said, you have to make sure that your book cover matches your content. And I think I did that well, but I also see that some people may not like it. They might not like it, or they may perceive it as something else. And I'm the author. It's my story, so I don't care.
But Torrie, if I can ask another question or piggyback, but Torrie, that's a good thing too, because you're able to talk about your book and what the the trajectory of your story is going to. So like you said, some people might not like it, but it gives you the opportunity to market yourself and your books and what's to come. So it's a conversation starter at the end of the day.
Very true. Very true. A lot of people at the book events that I've done, I noticed the symbol and the book cover is what brings them. What made you do this? And then it starts. So yeah.
Something else. I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead. Oh, no, I was going to say, I really like this conversation about book covers because one, it talks to the whole idea that, we're all writers, we're all authors, but it's also a business. And so the cover really is like kind of the first window into the book. And it's part of the business part, especially with traditionally published authors. And so one of the things I want to share about covers, so with self-published or hybrid authors, you tend to have a lot of control over what you want and how you want it and things like that. In traditionally published world, I say it's the art of collaboration. So sometimes you have to give up the idea that you had initially about, what you thought a cover may look like, what a font may look like, if you want photography versus like cartoon or illustrated cover, etc. But one of the things that I've always had, and this goes back to the whole kind of listening and learning, is learning how to talk with people about, especially in traditionally published, like when they say, what do you think you want your cover to be like? And so I try to keep it not so specific that it pigeonholes the artists who are part of the publishing company into doing something so specific that they're only able to come up with like one or two options. So I try to keep it vague. Like I'm picturing blue. I'm picturing two people on the cover. I'm open to cartoon, illustrated versus photography. But I always also think about, you have to think about when your book is on a shelf or at a book fair, you also have to think about the attractability pieces too. And there's so many great things online about what colors look good together. Mm-hmm. What colors look good in terms of accessibility, like if people have visual impairment or, what's easy to look at and everything. And so there's a lot that goes into thinking about the whole cover piece. But what I want to go back to is, again, what I love about, self-publishing is that you have a lot of control, but that also means you have to have a lot of eyes and a lot of details. With traditionally published, it's the art of collaboration and being willing to say, okay, that was my initial idea, but I'm okay with it going this way because maybe you see something that I don't see business-wise in terms of the art of the cover.
Excellent. And I want to talk a little bit about the traditional publishing versus self-publishing versus hybrid publishing as well. I think everybody out there needs to understand the differences. Something I hear a lot on the Black Writers Workspace is people feel like they're going to write a book and then they're going to get this publishing deal. It's like an automatic. I know they're going to get this. I'm going to get a deal because my book is so dynamic. Well, there's just so many pieces to that. There's so many things. There are people who have tried hundreds of times to get traditional deals and cannot get them. And there are those that just decide they don't want to get a traditional deal. They're just going to self-publish. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about self-publishing, and those traditional publishers out here. Talk to us about the process of getting that deal, because I think that's important too. It is very, very important, because this is another thing that you have to think about. What I wish I would have known is understanding the nuances between, going after the traditional deal and deciding to self-publish. As Frederick said, there are some things you're going to have control over. There are a lot of things when you get a traditional deal that you're going to have to collaborate with others on. And so from a self-publishing perspective, and those of you out there don't hesitate to chime in, is that when you self-publish, you are responsible for everything. Now you can get someone to help you do it, but you are responsible for it. Okay. And so that means you're going to write the book. You have to find your own editors, your coaches. You're going to have to do your book cover or hire someone to do it for you. They may lay it out for you. They're going to hopefully will add it to Amazon or Ingram Spark, and we can have a whole conversation about Amazon versus Ingram Spark. I can tell you this, from what I've learned, add your book to Ingram Spark, because then you can get into bookstores. Okay. Amazon is great, but you're talking about competing with a lot of books, and there are still bookstores who will not put your book in their store if it's on Amazon. I want you to know that is still a thing. So be careful about that. And then once the book is uploaded to Amazon or Ingram Spark or Lulu or whoever you're going to use, you have to market it. So now you have to take the creative hat off, and now you have to put the entrepreneur hat on, and you have to create a sale funnel. How are you going to sell this book? How are you going to build a brand for yourself? What type of events are you going to go to? You're going to do book fairs. You're going to do speaking engagements. I mean, those are the things that you have to think about when you're self-publishing. And this takes time. It takes time. It takes money. It takes commitment. It's not going to just, and I see this all the time. People get on the page and they get so disgusted because they're like, I've had my book out for 6 months and I haven't sold many copies. I'm a failure. I'm like, you're not a failure. You just you gotta work at it. You've got to put, I was on a podcast the other night. We was talking about people selling books at funerals. Literally, like they're in the back seat. I got a couple. You want some? You've got to hustle to get those books out there, and you have to find other ancillary ways. I think there are so many doors that's going to open to you once you publish a book. So you don't just always have to say, I'm going to make all my money off book sales. I make money off of speaking. I do videos for people. I do a book fair. I have my own website that I help people do book marketing. The doors that open for you once you write a book are huge. So you have to be thinking about all the things that this opportunity is going to provide for you. But if you're self-published, you have to be willing to do the work. Any of the self-published people out there, let's talk about what you wish you would have known and what you corrected during this process. Start with you, Melissa. Let's talk about some of the things that just the self-publishing component, what the people out there need to know in order to be prepared.
So for me, I feel like because my books, I have two like separate genres of books. I have the children's books, but it's specifically like more of a Pictionary. And then I have my I call them like my midwifery books. So these are books where I have to have references who are OBGYNs, who are within the healthcare field. And so I think it's really important to know and understand, obviously the kind of book that you're writing, and what kind of assistance you would need from that. Even though I'm Haitian and I speak the language, I still needed to have a translator to make sure that what I was writing, the words that I was writing was correct. Because in Haiti, we have 10 different departments, and I live in one department, but someone who lives in more of the southeast corner, their dialect is slightly different. And so I wanted to make sure that I was including everyone within this book. And so I had to hire a Haitian translator, which at the time I thought was funny because I'm like, well, I'm Haitian, like I could do it. And when I first published my book, I had a lot of people. That was the issue I ran into. I had a lot of people from different departments saying, "Oh, we don't say it like that. We don't add it like that. We don't." And I'm like, wait, hold on. Hold up. Let me go back again. And I think I've edited my book at least over 5 times in the last 3 years that they've been out. And so that's one thing about the self-publishing process that I think is amazing, but also a challenge, is that you're always going to be getting feedback, which I think is amazing. But then the challenge is like kind of picking between the feedback that you are going to utilize, what actually is helping you, what actually is beneficial for your book. Like many of the panels have said, not everything you write is for everyone. There are some Haitian speakers that I know, or just people in general, that they're, the terms that they're using or that they're used to is more of a French dialect of Creole. And so I'm speaking very specifically to my book, but I had to realize that sometimes I'll be asking advice from someone and they're looking at things through a specific lens and not very broad and general. And so I can't take your advice. Like, thank you. I appreciate you for telling me that this was spelled incorrectly, but you're thinking at it from one kind of a scope. And I'm trying to broaden it for everyone so that multiple people, not even just people who are from Haiti, but people from Saint Martinique, people from other countries that speak Creole-like languages as well. And so just really learning that in the publishing publishing process that sometimes what you're doing is actually correct. And sometimes you get a lot of comments or feedback, and it literally has nothing to do with you. People are just kind of saying things. And so you really do have to cherry pick what works for you and be confident in what you're doing. And, you have a good editor, you have a good translator, you have all of the tools, and everything is good. And there's still some people who will have feedback or something negative to say. And you have to be firm in knowing, like, I did my due diligence. I know what I'm doing. I know what I'm saying, and I'm right. And so that's one thing for me that, at least in those two frameworks that I've noticed, can be kind of a challenge, or at least for me, it's been very helpful, knowing that I have the expertise to do this, and not on some like showboaty, like I don't need help, but sometimes like, it's like, I do know what I'm doing. Like I did focus on this. And so that for me is one thing about the publishing process.
Cool. Love that. And did anybody else have any comments about the self-publishing process, something they had to learn, unlearn? I know for myself, it was not an easy task. My first book came out 2010, and I didn't know what to do. I started asking people I knew who had written books. They gave me a lot of advice. It wasn't good advice. I ended up going with a hybrid publisher, and I spent a lot of money getting my book with a vanity publisher. And it was an interesting experience, but it was one that taught me that I would rather do it myself, because in 2010, these vanity publishers were uploading our information to Facebook. I no longer have access to that information. So, I don't even, because of the way things were done back then, if I say to them, I want access to my Facebook account, they tell me I owe them $800 to get access to my own information. So these are the things that we all need to know. There are a lot of scammers out there. So just be very, very careful as an independent self-published author, because it's all on you. So Andrew, talk to us about what you learned.
Yeah, just like everyone's saying who's self-published, it starts and finishes with you. You got to be, like you said, you got to vet these people. You still have to have your eyes on stuff, even if there's things that you outsource. And I think what helped me, especially looking back at my first book, especially after I got my proofs or what have you, I was able to do a couple of, like, I'll say soft readings or preview readings, and that helped me get feedback. And I actually went back in and did a little bit of editing. But in regards to hitting the ground running, like everyone's kind of alluded to and will probably allude to, especially in the book marketing piece, you have to know who is your audience and how are you going to reach them. And I think a big simple mistake that a lot of authors make, and I know I'm kind of floating, it's like, once I put it out here online, that's it. You still, like everyone's saying, you have to work the process. And I think for me, once I had that final official date where I'm like, okay, I feel I have everything ready, it was hitting this venue, hitting that venue, and building up. So literally within like 6 months of doing my release is when I did my first major book festival. So you have to learn. You have to still learn. You got to really vet these folks who you're going to outsource. Hey, help me find this, or help me work this, or help me clean this up. But you still have to have your eyes on everything. You have to have your eyes on everything. And the last thing is, every day, regardless of the people who know you, you got to assume that people don't have a clue of who you are, what your work is. You have to regularly advocate for yourself. And if you're not, then your help's not going to come.
Excellent. So for those who have the traditional deals, what's different? Talk to us about the difference. And I want to demystify this idea of getting a traditional publisher deal versus the self-publishing, because I still think there is a great deal of confusion out there. Talk to us about your process of getting your deal. How did you get your deal, and some of the hurdles you had to overcome and some of the things you had to learn? Either one of you could take it. I'm sorry.
Okay. I'll go first, and I'll keep it brief. So, I did what many people who aspire to be a traditionally published author do. I queried agents for literary representation to try to sell book to publishers, met lots of rejection, whoever said you have to have a thick skin and be used to hearing no a lot is really, that's a skill set that it takes. And it also takes the confidence to know that a no doesn't mean no forever. So I got a lot of rejections from literary agents. I got a lot of rejections from publishers who, were taking unagented work as well. And then, so this is when I go back to, like, it pays to be nice to people, and it pays to, you never know how people are going to be talking about you or through you. So one of my writing teachers, her name was Denise Hamilton, just happened to be in New York during like a President's Day weekend. She was celebrating the publication of her hardback book going into softcover, and she writes mysteries set in Los Angeles, Denise Hamilton. She just happened to be talking about me at a party. Who knew? And the person who ended up becoming my agent, I mean, not my agent, but my publisher at Kensington, his name was John Scanamilio. He overheard her talking about me. He emailed me like on that Monday after President's Day and was like, I heard from Denise Hamilton, you wrote this book about these 4 Black gay men in Los Angeles. It's kind of like a waiting to exhale, kind of take a look at it. And 2 weeks later, I had a deal with Kensington, a 2-book deal. Now, one of the lessons that I've learned is, and I want to say I was pretty lucky and pretty blessed there, because it doesn't always happen that way for people, just the word of mouth. But that word of mouth piece is really important. So like I heard Cheryl Lee Ralph did this interview the other day, be as kind to as many people as you can for as long as you can, because you never know where your reputation for kindness is going to take you and things like that. But one of my lessons learned is that, early on, and that was like 2005, 2007 with my first 2 novels with Kensington, I was under that impression that the book is out, it's just going to sell. I didn't realize that there are multiple jobs, even as a self-published author or a traditionally published author. There are so many jobs you have. One is that art of collaboration with the book company itself. So your editors, the people who are the marketers in the book company, learning how to develop relationship with booksellers and bookstores, etc. There's also that social media piece that many of us have to be an expert at now, and making sure that, at least daily, we're doing 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 posts about our work, about ourselves and everything. And then there's also that piece of, the relationship building with readers as well. And we can talk about reviews and whether or not to read them, not read them later. But there's so many jobs that happen, whether you're self-published or traditionally published. But I would say with traditionally published, you're coming into someone else's business and they see you as a product, one of hundreds of authors on their label. So you have to think through, how do I develop relationships so I'm always on someone's conversation point within the company? How do I make sure that people are still enthusiastic about my books and my project, what I'm producing and everything? And so my lesson learned, there is that just because the book is out doesn't mean that you've got a contract for life. After 2 books, I was dropped by Kensington, but now I'm on a label called Bold Strokes Books, which focuses specifically on LGBTQ literature and books. And I am so happy there. It's like a small community, and we value each other, we support each other. And so those are one of my lessons learned about publishing with traditional companies.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I think that is so important for people to hear. You want to speak to it as well, Naseera?
Yeah, I got picked up by a traditional publisher, and everything seemed to be going great when I was with her. She fell ill and had to shut her company down. That was the decision that I made to go ahead and self-publish. How I got picked up was after self-publishing, I still sought after agents and publishers still. I was still querying. I was still sending out synopsis. I was still sending out chapters of my book. And I can honestly tell you that I got rejected 175 times before I got picked up. And how my current publisher found me, she just happened to be on Amazon. She just happened to see the cover of my book, got the information. I don't even know how Christine got my information, but I was in my car coming from my daughter's house, and I got this phone call from a number I didn't recognize, and I almost didn't answer the phone, but I went ahead and answered it, and she said, Naseera? And I said, yes. She said, "This is Christine Gray." Now, Christine Gray, I knew of. She has published several novels. And when she said that she ran across my book on Amazon and wanted to offer me a deal, I almost fainted in my car. I couldn't believe that she just came across me by just going through covers and saw my cover and contacted me. Since I got picked up with her, she offered me a 3-book deal, because when I first published Kidra, it was a single novel. I did not want book 2, book 3. People have a habit of trapping you in your character and not in your genre. I wanted to be captured in my genre and not my character. So I had no intention of doing 2 and 3, but a friend of mine talked me into it. I went ahead and did it and created three chapters, 3 series of the book. She offered me a contract for those 3 books. That 3-book contract turned into a 4-book deal. And now my 4-book deal has turned into another 3-book deal. She just found me. But there is a existence out there that states that once you self-publish, that a traditional publisher will never publish your self-published work. And I'm telling you now, that is not true. That is not true. Do not be discouraged by that, because that's not true. My books were self-published by me. My editing was done by me. My book covers were done by me. And she has not only published 1, but it's just, the door is open now. And I have a great rapport with her. My books are doing well. But a lot of people will be discouraged because they'll hear that. They'll say, well, if you self-publish your work, no traditional publisher is going to touch you. Mm-hmm. And that's not true. That is not true.
Oh, my goodness. It's so funny you said that. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off, but keep going.
That's absolutely not true. That's why I say you have to have thick skin here. You can't allow the slightest thing to push you off. And when it comes to doing your solicitations, when you're looking for a traditional publisher, you have to know the difference between a negative rejection and a positive rejection, because there is such a thing. If you get a rejection and it says, although we read it with interest, but it's not the right fit for our company, but to keep going, that's a positive rejection. And people don't understand the difference between the two. That means they liked it, but it was something about it that wasn't going to allow them to look at the marketing value of it for them. And it doesn't mean that what you're doing is not acceptable. It's just it wasn't what they were looking for. Mm-hmm. So when you get that feedback, we read it with interest, but it wasn't the right fit, that is a positive rejection. And when you keep getting those, you're on the right track. You just need to keep going.
Love it. Somebody asked the question, or actually Marcus, he said, what do you mean captured by your content and not your character, not getting the character part? Can you elaborate a little bit more on that?
Yes. I can give you a good example. J.K. Rowling. She wrote the Harry Potter books. She can't write nothing else. She has tried. It does not work. Unless she's collaborating with somebody, it's not going to work. That's how you get captured by your character, not your genre. You have authors out there who stick to a specific genre, such as the Harry Potter books, and I'm going to throw that out there again. And she did try something else and it didn't work. You don't really want that to happen because they won't be receptive. You've seen movies yourself where you had this one character several times, and then the writer will go off into something else, and that movie just didn't work. And then they keep doing it, and it's not working. But when they go back to where they started at with the characters, it's working. And that's because you've been trapped by your character. You have that with certain authors. They just can't seem to write anything else that is more receptive than other than what they first started with. JK will never be able to do anything else other than Harry Potter, period. Now, since she's tried it and it didn't work, now the new Harry Potter books are coming out, and this is going to be based on the children of Harry Potter. So this one might do better for her than before. The author that wrote the Twilight series, that's all she can do. She tried to do something else, didn't work. Came out with the book, The Host. It didn't sell. The movie didn't sell. It did horrible. Now she's coming back out with another Twilight series where it's based on the vampires for a point of view and not the love interest point of view. So this is how you get trapped by your character. So there is a difference.
Right.
You really want to be trapped by your genre and not by your character, because your fans will pigeonhole you, and there's nothing that you can do about it because you started it.
It's like being typecast as an actor.
Mm-hmm. It is.
You get into a role. I always think about Fishburne playing Ike Turner. I mean, those things that hurt you. Is that right? Did he play that? Yeah, you get typecast and it becomes very difficult. But I think sometimes authors will use a pen name for their new work to kind of get away from being pigeonholed in that way. But that's such a great thing to say. And what was very interesting also that you brought up was the fact that if you are a self-published author, you can still seek a traditional deal. And that is something I've heard in the past. I've heard it both ways. I've heard industry gurus say, oh, if you self-publish that first book and it doesn't sell well, no publishing company is going to pick you up. And then I've had people on who are very good in the industry, have worked with thousands of writers, and say that is just not true. So I love that you are an example that you can get a traditional publishing deal after you self-publish. Mm-hmm. And I'm glad that this is a fact, because self-publishing should not be a hindrance to your progress as a writer. I think that is so unfair that there's still people who believe that if you self-publish a book, that means you weren't good enough to get a traditional publishing deal. It's just not true. Many of us didn't even try. I never really tried to get a traditional publishing deal. So it's good to hear you say that. Thank you so much for kind of demystifying that for us, that we know someone that we can look at and say, yes, this person was able to get a deal after self-publishing a book. We've got a couple of questions coming in, guys. Can we take a couple of them if everybody's okay with that? I don't want to keep bypassing them. And I'm going to go back up to a few. Okay. Here's one here from author Michelle Small. She says, my book, Quit Making Excuses and Lock Your Hair, is self-published genre, self-help. It was released in December 2021. I've been thinking about releasing a new edition. Any advice on that? Is it too soon? What should I add? Anybody want to take that?
Yeah. Look, if that's what you feel moved to do it. There's no template where it's like, if you're going to re-release something or do an update, that you wait a certain amount of time. And if that's kind of what you're talking about doing anyway, and think about it. If there's some things that now you're realizing, I wish I'd put it in there the first time around. So if I do the update, I can incorporate new information, keep it relevant, and you're drawing value to your ongoing series, go ahead and do it. Look, the rules to me are like totally different now. Why not do it? If you feel moved and motivated and it's going to help somebody, you're going to reach people. We know just by the topic alone, there's, these cultural battles on your hairstyle, whatever. It's not going to go away anytime soon. So you might as well go ahead and build off the info that you've done previously and be like, hey, here's some new things that I want to incorporate to instill you to go ahead and do that. So I'd say go forward and do it.
Excellent. Anybody else want to chime in, LaMonda?
Yeah.
I was just gonna say, if you look at it in the terms of textbooks in college, and your professor is writing a new edition, and you have to buy that book, the same book every year, and it only has like maybe 2 new chapters or 2 new words. Like, you have control as a self-published author, like Andrew says. You have control, so just do it without thinking about it.
Excellent. Someone else was about to say something. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to what author C. Michelle was asking on what should I add. As someone who has locks in, and I just recently had my locks in for a year now, I think a great thing to add is to talk to people who have locks or talk to locticians and add in their professional advice or add in people's personal experiences with locks, people who had locks for years and then combed them out or cut their hair. Ask them why they did that. And just you could talk more about the experiences of people who have locks. That could be something you add in. So I just wanted to mention that to Michelle.
Excellent. Thank you. I love that advice. I feel the same way. It's like his hair is so, I mean, with the Crown Act and so many different things that's happening now, this would be an ideal time. I mean, and that's something I want all of us to do as we build these brands, is to pay attention to what's happening around us, because our books can really, we can connect our books to what's happening in the world around us. And it's a great way to build a brand and to get yourself in front of the camera, in front of some of these major networks. If you can connect what you're writing about to what's happening in our society, this is an excellent way to help build your personal, your professional brand, and to help you get the type of publicity that you need to get your book out there. So absolutely, hair is key right now. It is big. And so definitely update that book and get it back out there and connect it to what's going on. Ruth says that she wrote her memoir in 2023, which reflects on a tenure within the fire department. She says she's been asked by several colleagues to do a children's book aligned with the job as a female firefighter. Your take. Anybody give Ruth some real deal. You need to make this happen. Anybody?
Yeah, I think that's great. Like, okay, first of all, we have to remember that history tells us that these literary spaces were not for us. You are in a male-dominated industry where there may not be not only women, but there are probably even less women of color or melanation in that industry. And right now, this is the perfect time to capitalize on that, because we have books like Girls Like Me. We have all of these books that are centered around representation. What better way to encourage young girls, young girls really, to get into that industry? And it could be a book and then turn it into a coloring book that turns into a partnership with your fire department, where they're doing things where they're shadowing young girls that want to become firefighters, or just educating the community about the different options that they have. We're not just basketball players and football players and, things like that. That's not all that we can do. So this is the perfect opportunity to really shed some light on the different paths that they have, because you never know. That young girl that gets your book, you may be the first female firefighter she's ever seen in her life.
Mm-hmm. Love that. Stay positive. Write the book. Absolutely. Write the book. I think we all agree, right? Write this book. We want to see it, and we're going to support you, because I love what you said. We need to put our characters out there. What I love about the Black Ink Book Festival in New Orleans is that I would say probably 40 to 45% of the writers are writing children's books. Now, if you go out and you Google, if you ask people about, books that are on the shelf, that are published by the Big Five, and there's a lot of conversation around there's not enough children's books with Black authors in it. Well, guess what? There are a lot of self-published books with Black characters in it. And so we need to be pushing those things out as much as possible. Our kids need to see characters that look like them. So that's important. So I love that. Thank you so much, Nathelie. I really appreciate that. A question came up. I didn't want to get into this thing about Tyler Perry, but true crime, crime fiction, you wanted to go here again. What he's talking about with what the author said about not being able to write anything else or trapped by the character. Isn't that what Tyler Perry does? Like what he does or not doesn't. Anyway, I'm sorry, I'm reading this crazy. He stick to that fan base. Now, he does have a fan base, and we all have a fan base. So I want to take the fan base component of this question and start, and everybody talk about your fan base and how you're staying connected with them. Now, I won't get into Tyler's writing skills. I'll just say that what I hear is that there are always some pieces missing, and sometimes viewers don't like that component of it. But everyone has a fan base, and your writing may not be for my liking, and vice versa. But that's something that we have. We have the ability to decide. We have preference of what we enjoy writing. Somebody want to talk about this, building your fan base, sticking to what works, not veering away from that, because you may just lose your fan base. So, these are questions I had. My first book was Christian fiction. My next book wasn't. And I worried about people putting me in that cubby hole of like, you write Christian fiction, so you can't go out and write a general fiction book that's going to have curse words and sex scenes and those types of things. And I concerned myself with that. Anybody else worried about losing their fan base based on making these types of changes? Open up your mic. Let's talk about it.
I know one for me, my fan base right now I'm trying to go for is the younger adults. I would say 18 to 27. So the younger adults. And I'm also catering to more of the anime gamer world. Because for me, being one of the few Black girls that was into that stuff at that age, I never felt comfortable with the fact that I didn't see characters that looked like me. And a lot of the fantasy novels and a lot of the anime, I know now it's starting to get a little more popular because Megan Thee Stallion likes anime, but it's like before her, it's like I was considered a unicorn. Like, what do you mean you're from the hood and you like video games and anime? It's like, what do you mean? So for me, I'm trying to stick to that fan base, but at the same time, how do we open them to my book series too? Because let's be honest, they're not exposed to a lot of stories and characters that look like them. So that's my you can say my problem right now, just trying to get my book out there to them so they can get to the story and learn about it so they can read it.
Excellent.
Yeah, I'm going through that right now. The books that I have had published traditionally with my genre, which is the horror romance genre. The first book, fantastic. The series did great. Second book, fantastic. It sold over 10,000 copies, no problem. The fourth book bombed. And I'm not going to say bomb, because this was the first LGBTQ horror romance novel that I have ever done. And it's a take on the Frankenstein genre, Malady of a Frankenstein, where the descendant is actually African American. That was okay. But for some reason, so far to date, in comparison to my other books, I've only sold over 1,000 copies, where my other books have exceeded that amount twice fold. So I'm revisiting it now because I'm like, what is it about this one that it was completely different than my other writings that's causing it not to take off the way the other one does with my fan base? And it is a concern. So what I have done is I've gone back with my publisher, with Christine, and I'm like, can we do something about the cover? Can I resubmit a different synopsis? And hopefully that will make a change. It's just like when you have a record deal and your records are selling all over the place and you have that one song that just did not take off. And sometimes you have to antiquate it to the environment and the temperament of when that song came out. I'm thinking because this was completely different than what I'm used to writing about. And even though the editor was like, yes, this is great. And my publisher was like, yes, this was great. But my fans was like, I don't know. So I'm going through that right now. And I'm hoping that with the re-release of the book next month, that it will attract more and that it'll do as well as the rest of my novels. But like I said, this can happen. This can happen. So in this case, I'm not being trapped by my character. This was reflective of my genre. And for some reason, Malady did not do as well as I hoped. But I'm hoping with this re-release next month that it does better. But yeah, this is what I'm going through. I definitely understand that concept, how You can have great writings, and then all of a sudden you step out of bounds of what you're used to doing, and it not take off as well as what you've done before. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I was a little worried. I'm a little worried, a little worried about
and all of this. I love that. Thank you so much for sharing. All of this has to do also with understanding your brand and who your audience is. A lot of us go into this without even understanding who our audience is. We're just writing. You understand your audience because you have data, you have your past experiences to kind of help you identify who that audience is. Now you've just got to figure out what was it about this book that wasn't, in line with that particular audience. But for those who are starting out, you got to know your audience. You have to understand who your audience is. And that becomes a tough thing because we get so tied into, we just want to write. I just want to write. But I want you, as you write, to start thinking about who is going to buy this book, who is going to enjoy this book. And fiction is hard because fiction, when you have a fiction fan base, they pretty much will stick with you because, they're waiting on the next and the next and the next one. But you still need to understand who this audience is. So anybody want to talk a little bit more about this fan base and how do you build it? Melissa, talk to us.
Oh, yeah. For me, because I have kind of slightly a different perspective on the fan base. When I first started doing my Learn Creole Haïtien Pictionary books, the reason why I did it was because I noticed, like, okay, we don't have Pictionaries or a lot of subject books in my language. So that was like one big thing. But as soon as the book started rolling out and, I had sold a couple of copies, I actually had some people who, which was kind of funny to me, say, hey, Haitian Creole is not a popular language. Why don't you try Spanish? Why don't you do French instead? And one, that was an insult, but I thought it was interesting that was the reason why I did the books, because, it's kind of a localized language, which makes sense. But that's the reason why I created these books, so that people who speak this specific language can have books for them. So to look at me and say, oh, well, that's a small language, only just 5 million people speak it. I think you should try French because it's more worldwide. You would have a larger fan base. You will be able to attract more people who don't just speak one language. Or you should do Spanish. Spanish is way more popular. You'll definitely, so to hear that was a little like, oh, okay. But it also just helped me ground, like, okay, I really, really want to focus on what I'm doing and not broaden out, which for some people would be, like that's what they would want to do instead, like broaden their horizons and actually open up the gates for other languages or other people. But for me, I really wanted to be, I did not want to be inclusive because I wanted to really focus and give my specific fan base that wasn't getting any love, the love that they deserve, and not focus on the other bases that are out there. So that's one thing that I realized, that if you have a specific niche that you want to focus on, don't let the look of the audiences in other niches make you join that, because you're writing for who you want to write for. Just like Michelle was saying, like, your audience is your audience, even if it's a small group, but that is your audience. And, you have to take care of them and you have to cherish them. And I think that's really important as an author in general, to really focus in on who your audience is and not try to, compete and get into everyone's audience, because that sometimes won't work for you how you think it will.
I agree. I think that it's important that we know that our work is not for everyone. And for those out there who are trying to write for the masses, you're going to burn yourself out very quickly. So, everyone is not going to appreciate what you're writing because it's not for them. And that's great. That's okay. And we don't, some of us like country music. Some of us like rap. We're all different people. But for some reason, I don't know. We're going to talk a little bit about reviews, because reviews, in my opinion, hit a little differently when it's a book, when you're writing a book. And I think, and so I want to go around the room and talk a little bit about this, because, when you've written 80,000 words and you've spent years working on this, and you put it out there, and you have those those people, the freewheeling reviewers, people who you didn't write it for them. It's not even their thing, but they decide they want to tell you who you should be, what you should be doing. I remember someone told me when I wrote my first book, it was a Christian fiction. And they said, why would you write a Christian fiction novel? No one, only Christians are going to read it. And I'm going, that's what I wrote it for. I wrote it for Christians. I mean, it's okay, but you run into people with their opinions, and it becomes a little disheartening because you're like, I just wrote 80,000 words. I'll never forget a friend said, I read your book, I loved it, but I found a typo. And I literally almost got depressed. Like, I was like, oh my gosh, there's nothing perfect out there. So these reviews they can sting you, but you have to keep going, learn and listen and learn and revise if need be, but don't get discouraged because someone found one typo in 80,000 words. Okay. Don't lose your confidence. So let's talk about reviews and what we wish we would have known, because the reviews can be really heartbreaking. And I'm not just talking about written reviews. I'm talking about people who just know you and may not trust that you can write. Anybody have that experience that people didn't think that you can write? Yeah, I wrote my first book and it was like, I'm like, I've been writing my whole life. But yet and still, when I wrote my first book, it became a conversation piece amongst people that became very interesting to me because they didn't know that I could write. And so that was very interesting. Let's talk about these reviews. I mean, comments. How do we overcome them? And this is big for those out there listening. You need to pay attention because this is something that's going to happen. When you release these works out into the world, it's your legacy. They're going to be there for 50, 60, 70, 100 years. Okay. People are going to read these books and they're going to think they know you. They're going to think they know something about you. They're going to feel that you just exposed something about your family, even if it's fiction. I have folks who would come up to me and say, am I in your book? I'm like, it's fiction. It's fiction. But there was always this, like, I'm the little girl from the hood who wrote a book. So everybody's like, oh, what did she write about? Did she put me in the book? Oh my goodness. So let's talk about the responses you get, how to get beyond that, and not allowing it to just clip your wings. Anybody, open up your mic. Let's talk about this.
Gosh.
Andrew?
Yeah. Reviews are what they are. And these are some of the takeaways that you're going to have to learn. Like, the positives, when people have a positive review, yeah, that is a pat on the back. And it's kind of give you an idea of, like, one of the things we always talk about, what works, how am I delivering to my audience, my word choice, all that type of thing. So when you get a positive review, it's a combo of, hey, you're on target, and it's giving you a baseline. Then every once in a while, you got to remind yourself, when you get a negative review, it's like, you got to look at the source. I'm just being totally blunt. It's almost like me criticizing a 5-star chef on how to cook. Now, don't get me wrong. I do all right, but I don't have a restaurant. So, like, you got to temper that. And also got to realize, like, some of the people that push back, these are the same people that haven't found the fortitude or courage to go out and tap into those things that they've always wanted to do. I ain't gonna do it. So you gotta, when you get a negative review or negative commentary, especially when it comes from people who, quote, know you, you got to remind yourself, and I talked about this in an audiobook, you got to remind yourself there's a larger universe of people who don't know you versus the universe of people who do know you. And if you are, quote, on your job and, your marketing, your press, your interviews, all that type of thing, what's going to happen is the people who know you and they see you moving with a book that sold a lot, or you're speaking at this conference, or you're on television, you're doing this. It's funny how things come back around. So you got to pause and keep going. Like you've heard before, you have to have a thick skin. You also have to look at the source, especially if it's a negative review. And I'm not trying to be mean, but it's like, if you have problems spelling a 3-letter word, how are you going to critique a book? I'm just saying.
I know when people talk about reviews, there's 2 examples that I always tell people to look at. Go look at 50 Shades of Grey. There is one gentleman who wrote paragraphs of negativity about that book. I was cracking up because he was like, oh, you're biting your lip. Oh, you know what that does to me. And then he was just going on and on and on and on and on. And he was just so negative. And when people ask about that, I said, go read that review. You know how much that book sold. You know that it was a movie that also was a hit. But these are the comments that people make. I had one person give me a negative comment about The Longing. She said, I think you must have been bored when you wrote it. I know that there are many supermodels that don't act like her. You seem to have poised her as a privileged model. And I know models and they don't act like that. And I'm saying to myself, this is a model who fell in love with a werewolf. So who do you know? Exactly. Who do you know? And the third thing is I tell people, like it was quoted in the movie Straight Outta Compton, you bought it. I got paid for it. You didn't like it, but I sold it to you. Done.
This is hilarious. My take on reviews is this. So my friend Tati Richardson, she wrote a novel last year called The Build Up, a great Black romance novel. When I was coming out with One and Done this year, she was like, Fred, do not look at Goodreads. Do not take a deep dive into Goodreads, or do not take a deep dive into what people say on, some of the larger online book reviewing sites. She's like, look at themes. And the reason and I'm glad I took that advice, because once I saw a 2 or a 3, I was like, I don't write 2 or 3 star review books. I know I don't write two star books or whatever, but they have been positive. But I do look for themes. But I also have to share, we're all Black on screen, and I'm assuming many of the people who are watching and listening are Black as well. We're still in a very racist country. We're still in a country where people will say, well, I just don't identify with the characters. And to me, that says a lot about maybe you just don't want to understand a lot about Black communities, about Black characters, about Black authors. And if that's the case, then maybe remove yourself from reviewing the book. There's a lot of critiques about romance novels as well. And that's because romance is a primarily women-driven industry. Romance drives all of publishing. It's about empowering women and empowering people to find, true love and things like that. But it still gets a lot of critiques from people, even though it drives the industry. And so, I would say to anyone who is watching and thinking about their next steps in terms of being an author is, same theme, thick skin. You got to take the good and the bad with what people say about your work, but ultimately it comes down to having confidence in what you're doing, and confidence in what you're putting out into the world. And you have to let it speak for itself and then move on to the next project. Because, taking that deep dive into Goodreads, I will tell you that there could be days or nights I would sit at home crying if I read every single negative review that was out there. And it's going to come. We're going to get positive, we're going to get negative. It's about how do you then process it yourself and keep it moving.
I love what you said. When you brought up Elin Harris at the beginning of the series, I read every Elin Harris book. And you got to think about, this was the 90s. This was early 90s. And I love those books. And I think, like you said, we're still the minority. We're still marginalized people. We're still writing stories we're still demystifying the world of the Black experience for people. People still see us as being very one or two level. That's it. We can't fall in love and have romance, and everything has to still, in this day and age, it's just more easily digested if it's a white character than a Black character, to have a certain kind of love, to write horror, to write fantasy, to write sci-fi. We accept that from certain cultures, but not from ours. And so we're still up against these types of things. So that is a reason why we have to be steadfast in our belief that the world needs to hear our stories. They need to know what our stories are, and we have to continue to put them out there. So I love that. So thank you so much. Anybody else want to talk about reviews, what you learned? And not just, I want to, LaMonda, I'm going to go to you, but we don't have to just talk about what strangers say, what people you know have to say, because I've had to take a step back. It's like, oh my God, this book was so good. I remember someone saying to me, asking me if I was telling someone else's story and was I going to get sued for it. And I remember going, it's fiction. Like I think I should have had a shirt when I first wrote my first book. It was like, it's fiction, everybody. It's fiction. It's not about you. You're not that character. It was just amazing how people kind of like read it and was like, oh my God, they were trying to identify themselves in my work. Now, if I was writing werewolves, I probably could have found some people who would have fit that way, but yeah, it wasn't that. LaMonda, talk to us about your review experiences.
To your your experience, Michelle, I've had people point out typos or things like that, and for me, I just have to tell them, oh, that's just my book's birthmark. Don't worry about it. Like, I mean, Nathelie said, you had done your due diligence, or everyone has said it. You've done your due diligence. You've put the work in. If you find a typo after hundreds and 200s pages, I did great. That's an A+ in my book. So to anyone that's listening, kick the perfectionism out the door, because mistakes are going to happen. We are human. And as Black people, we have to recognize that. I know we have been taught that we have to do 10 times better than our counterparts. We can't do that. We have to realize that we are human just as much as everyone else, and that will reflect in our work. Sometimes we may have a typo, we may have a comma splice. As long as you did your due diligence and you did your due diligence, the reviews don't matter. And like Miss Naseera said, you bought my book. Thank you. Your review does not matter because I still got paid. So that's all that matters.
It's so interesting.
I want to say thank y'all. I want to say thank y'all for sharing the reviews, because that's the one thing that I am very nervous about. My first book sold a little over 200 copies so far, but it did come out in 2021. And my second book came out November of last year, 2023. And I think I've sold maybe about almost 50 books. I have not gotten a bad review yet, and I'm nervous about that. Okay. The other thing is, I really didn't tell her. I just started telling my family and friends that I wrote books. So I've only had strangers really read my books, like not people that know me for a long time. So I don't know if that's the case. It's because, people don't know me and they're really looking at it from a fresh pair of eyes, to where they're not judging the author, they're judging the story actually. So I think that's what makes my situation a little bit better. But I'm nervous about that first bad review. I am very nervous. So thank you, Frederick, for sharing some thoughts on what to do about that, because I'm not sure how I'm gonna handle it. I did have a few people in my author groups that I'm in on Facebook when I first started sharing the book cover and stuff like that. I had a few people, but they just looked like trolls. It didn't really, like you said, it depends. Look at the person that's saying the stuff, right? So a lot of them just look like trolls. I don't even think they really even went to my Wattpad or even read the synopsis or anything. I just think they were being trolls. But I am nervous about that first bad review. I really am. I am.
I wouldn't read them. I would follow Frederick. I mean, great advice. Don't read them. Just, read to learn. If it's like you said, if it's a consistent message, pay attention. If they're saying, hey, the plot is not, I'm not connecting with it. But if it's, sometimes I've had people I had someone who was angry with me because I wouldn't let them onto the Black Writers Workspace, and they went into my Amazon book page and said all kinds of horrible things about me. Never read the book. And it was just great that at the end, they kind of said they didn't read the book. And they were just angry that I didn't let them into the page. But it was just, these things are being weaponized. And so just be very careful about letting that be the thing that impacts you. But we've got 6 minutes. My goodness, 2 hours go by really, really fast. I want to give everybody an opportunity to say a few words to keep everyone motivated. Everything that you heard here today is about, things we had to overcome. As you see, everyone's experience is different. And so we want you to take this and learn from our mistakes, but also to be empowered by the things that we were pouring out into you. So I do ask everyone to give, just wrap up, and we're going to go in order on the screen of just giving someone some positive words for those who are out there writing and trying to get their books out there. Start with you, LaMonda.
I would just say just stay on the course. Your work matters. Someone is out there waiting for you to release your nonfiction, your fiction, your children's book, whatever it is. Someone is waiting for you to do so. So don't get discouraged. It is a lot of hard work, but it's doable because we've done it multiple times. And there's support around you. You just have to be open to receive it.
Excellent. Andrew?
Yeah, I'd say pause and keep going. And what I mean by that, when you take a moment to pause, it is an opportunity to kind of refresh, to revisit what adjustments to make, but also just like celebrate yourself for even making a journey, because there's going to be people that are going to talk a lot, but they won't ever have that talk lead to action. So the fact that you are doing it, and whether it's slow or swift, and I say this in my weekly chat, whether it's slow or swift, movement is movement. And whether it's small or big, a victory is a victory. So keep it moving, keep it victorious, and pause and keep going. And as was said earlier, there's people waiting to hear your work, read your work. Don't keep them hanging for too much longer.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Andrew, for being with us. Torrie?
Just the continuation of what everybody else is saying. Just do it. Everybody has a story to tell. Everyone's story is unique, and you never know who you could be helping just by those few words that you shared. You don't know what motivation, what uplifting. Shoot, you don't know if you help someone just stay on this earth for that day, Mm-hmm. So I just say, tell that story. You never know. You never know who you can help, and you never know who else is going through the same thing as you.
Excellent, excellent. And everybody on the screen, be sure to drop your contact information in the comment area. If you can't see the comment area, you can put it in the private chat and I'll put it on there for you. So when you wrap up, if you want to just tell everybody how to get in contact with you, that would be great. Frederick?
What I will say is, one, thanks for everyone for watching. I would say if you're an aspiring author, continue working on your projects, share it with the community that will support you. I would also say, Google all of us who are on the screen right now and look up our book, our works, share it with other people. I would say building that sense of writer community with people, even before you have a published novel or a published piece, is so important, because the support you give to others will come back to you when your project comes out. So definitely develop that sense of community with other writers, other authors, Bookstagram people, reviewers, etc. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being with us. Love the conversation. Yes, for those out there, we are part of the Black Writers Workspace. It's a private Facebook group. Please join us. You can also find us on Instagram and X and LinkedIn. We have a lot of activities going on with the Black Writers Workspace. We're now wrapping up the Chapter 1 writing competition. We're going to be announcing the winners of that soon. We're planning for the 2025 Black Ink Book Festival here in New Orleans. And then we're going to we have master classes, and we have the Pen Posse every month. And the way we do the Pen Posse is we just put a letter out there and say, hey, if you're interested, fill out our survey, and we select based on your background. So we don't know everybody on the screen, but it's a great way to connect with people and to stay connected with your peers as well. So thank you, Frederick, so much for being with us. Nathelie?
Okay, yes. So my advice for all authors is to remember that you are an author, no matter what it is you're writing, no matter how long it takes. Don't compare yourself to the things that you see on bookshelves or the things that you're reading, because your story is unique and nobody can tell your story the way you do. This is not saturated. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Remember that everyone has a shoulder blade. So everyone is going to have an opinion, just like everyone has a shoulder blade. And tell people about your book, because they won't know about your book if you do not tell them. You can market it. You are a walking billboard. So shouting it from the rooftops. I am, and tell what it is that you do. Even if someone doesn't want to buy it, at least you know that the information is out there and that you're giving people an opportunity to experience the creativity that you're doing out right now. So
Excellent. Thank you again for being with us. Represent Birmingham, my hometown. So good to see you. Melissa?
Yes, and I have so many advices, but mainly just kind of a compilation of what everybody has already said. Honestly, keep doing what you're doing. Like I mentioned earlier, there are people who just want to buy a book from you. They don't care who else is writing. They're waiting for you, literally, to read your book, to buy your material. So do it. Just like if you're walking through the grocery store and you see the bread aisle, it is a false marketing. Most of those breads are owned by 4 people, but know that there are people who want a particular kind of bread. And so understand that your audience is your audience. And like Nathelie said, you are a walking billboard. Everywhere you go, talk about what you do, what you write, who you are. Be proud of yourself. Be proud of the accomplishments that you do, even if it's just a 30-page book or it's a 300-page book. Be proud of everything that you create and honor in that. And people will notice who you are and they'll gravitate towards you.
Absolutely. And we're going to wrap up with our final author. You want to give a few words of advice?
Yes, have thick skin because you're definitely going to need it. Understand that reviews are emotional, and there are those that wish they could do what you're doing and may reflect that in their comments. Research is very important. Make sure that you are researching the people that you are reaching out to. Read the reviews on them. Be committed, convinced, and connected in what you're doing. Do not become the worst enemy that you have, which is between your own ears. Make sure you are being true to yourself, and also make sure that you are steadfast. Don't get discouraged. Don't let other people influence what you're doing. Don't compare yourself to anyone, because that is another pitfall that some of new authors will make. My writing isn't like Stephen King's writing. Your writing, his writing is not like Wes Craven's writing. You have to be able to be convicted in what you're doing and know that you have something to offer to everyone that picks up a book. There's an audience for it. Don't even sweat the small stuff.
Excellent. Thank you so much for everything. 2 hours on a Saturday morning, having everyone here. Thank you so much for sharing your experiences. We don't know what the topic will be for next month, but we'll just follow us and you will find out what that topic will be. And if you want to recommend some topics, please do so. I've been dropping everybody's information in the comments area. But thank you so much. And I just ask everyone continue to follow us at Black Writers Workspace. Also, I have a platform called direct2author.com where you can upload your book and we promote you for free. We also offer book publishing and book marketing services. So that's direct2author.com. Please be sure to add your book. You can add your book for free. So do that. We have over 500 books and we're building the largest database of independent Black authors, authored books. And so we do ask you to be a part of that. So for those on the screen, thank you so much. Stay with us. We're going to end the live and then I'll definitely give you a formal farewell. So for you out there, goodbye and thanks for being a part of our Pen Posse Roundtable.
Bye.
All right. Yeah.